bill before that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so let me turn on the world.
Welcome to the regular meeting of OneShoreline for May 18th, 2026. Could I have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Director Coulson,
Here.
Director Tron,
Present.
Vice Chair Gaucher,
Here.
and Chair Reddick.
Here.
And we know that Director Rec will be arriving late, and Director Aiken is currently absent, as is Director Mueller.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to item 2, which is public comment. Persons wishing to address the board on OneShoreline related matters not on this agenda, as well as items listed under action to approve the consent agenda, may speak for up to 2 minutes. Comments on agenda items shall be heard during that item for up to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to address the board?
Oh, we do.
That's my chief of staff. He's.
Oh, I didn't know that. Do we have anyone online?
Yes, we do have Ann Schneider, and I'm allowing you to unmute yourself. So you have 2 minutes, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And I want to thank staff for sending out that notice about the hazard mitigation plans. I downloaded everything that has an impact near Millbrae. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but I wanted to let you all know that I've been looking into it's called sovereignty. It's when large regional agencies don't have to worry about local zones, local planning, which is something that greatly impacts the city of Millbrae with SFO and SFPUC. So I'll be looking for that information. And I know staff has been looking into things. Just recently, I discovered that it was SFPUC that built the Highline Canal because they knew back in the 20s that they were blocking Millbrae Creek's ability to flow into the bay. So that's the first of that link of SFO, SFPUC being responsible for the flooding that happens in Millbrae. And I bring that up because I think I've heard in the past that Millbrae didn't traditionally flood. We have always flooded. Even when San Bruno was flooding, we were flooding because of SFO. Thank you. Good luck today.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else?
And I do not see any other raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3, which is action to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda. Item 3A is approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2026 OneShoreline board meeting. Do I have anyone who would like to comment on that item? Can you check online?
Any person wishing to comment on the approving the minutes from our April board meeting and the consent agenda, please raise your hand on Zoom. And I do not see any raised hand here.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion in a second, and I will be abstaining since I wasn't here last time.
I move approval of the minutes and the agenda.
I'll second.
We need 4 votes.
We do.
Oh.
We do.
Okay, so we'll have to postpone this.
You can't, I mean, you can still vote, I mean, if you've had a
If you
opportunity
read
to
it,
review them,
because,
but that's
yeah,
your
we
discretion.
must vote even if
Okay.
we're not there.
All right,
Because you trust us.
Well, you can read it.
Yeah.
roll call, please.
I read the minutes.
If you read them, it's fine.
I skipped it this time.
Sure, Vice Chair Gaucher,
Yes.
Director Coulson,
Yes.
Director Tron,
Yes.
and Chair Reddick.
Abstain. I was absent.
Mm.
So we'll have to,
That
So
was
you
right.
have to-
Motion fails.
Okay,
Yes.
so can we revisit it later on if we get another person?
sure, do that. Yeah,
All right.
Yeah,
Make a note of that.
He's supposed to show up, so.
yeah, that's a really good idea. Probably, maybe at that point in time, we can probably ask for a motion to amend the
Right.
agenda to
Sure.
move that up back there, but yeah, thank you, good call.
Okay. Item 4 is regular business, and the first item is item 4A. Authorize the CEO to execute a 3-year agreement for a not to exceed amount of $400,000 with Haley and Aldrich for engineering services and management of infrastructure maintenance. The staff presentation.
All right, thank you very much. So this is in a way a continuation of what we did last month. And what I mean by that is for the first 6 years of OneShoreline's existence, our work in a lot of our work, not all of it, but a lot of our work in the flood zones was done on our behalf by San Mateo County through an agreement we had with the county, largely at Public Works, at County Public Works. And so they did work, they hired contractors, consultants, and then we reimbursed the county for that effort. And we used flood zone revenues, property tax revenues from flood zones to do that. Last month, the board authorized me to execute an agreement related to the work that would be done, routine maintenance services, not just in the flood zones, but largely in the flood zones. Other projects that would be done by that could include our Bayfront Canal project, which is a capital project paid for by capital project funds. And it could be, well, basically that's it. And if there were other projects involved, then we would include that in our annual work plan and in our annual budget. So we're moving away from the county process. We will no longer have an agreement with the county as of July 1 of 2026 to do those services. And so last board meeting, the board approved me to sign this contract that I mentioned previously. The total not to exceed on that for 3 years was $1.8 million. It's actually 2 agreements, if you remember, and the total of both agreements was $1.8 million. And then this at this meeting, we're requesting the board authorization to sign agreements with 2 entities. The first of which is item 4A, the second of which is item 4B. Item 4A is with a firm called Haley and Aldrich. We put out an RFP back in, I think it was in March. Does that sound right? And we had responses from a couple firms. Haley and Aldrich was the highest ranked after a process of evaluating those firms. And so this is on the screen now is a slide that describes what they would be doing. They'll provide routine maintenance, kind of construction management, as most people think of construction management, basically overseeing the operations on our behalf, coordinating in the field, reporting what's happening with the project implementation, and then also supporting our management of the assets and planning for future work in the assets, and inventorying the needs of these assets in the flood zones and Bayfront Canal and other things that come up on an emergency basis could be as well. So staff will develop an annual work plan with Haley and Aldrich that would be part of the budget that's approved next month for our flood zone work and our capital project work. And the amount, not to exceed amount for this contract is $400,000. The next item is related to environmental services. We're breaking apart kind of the construction management side from the environmental side. And that agreement will be discussed in the next agenda item. Again, the $400,000 not to exceed amount. This is a 3-year project contract. And it would be again funded by the flood zones. Work outside of the flood zones would be funded by the budget in regards to projects that we bring forward to the board. So this item is to request authorization for me to sign the contract with Haley and Aldrich.
Questions from directors? Anyone online would like to address this?
Members of the public online, if you'd like to comment on this item on the contract with Haley Aldrich, please raise your hand on. And I don't see any raised hand on Zoom.
Thank you. Any other comments from directors? Could I have a roll call, please?
Or you need a motion?
Oh, motion, right.
Move approval or second.
Roll call, please.
Great. Vice Chair Gaucher,
Yes.
Director Colson,
Yes.
Director Plum,
Yes.
and Chair Reddick.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Moving on to item 4B, which is to authorize the CEO to execute a 3-year agreement for a not to exceed amount of $200,000 with HT Harvey and Associates for environmental compliance services for maintenance and construction activities.
Yes, and so this is the second of the 2 agreements or contracts that I described earlier that are emanating from our transition from working with the county public works to our own contractors. I'll give a sense of the budget now. The budget that we had over the last 6 years with the county, it averaged about $1.2 million in expenses per year. And our estimate with these combined contracts, the ones approved last month and the two that we proposed for today, is about $800,000 annually for 3 years. So we see the opportunity for some savings. It's a little bit more work on the staff time because we have multiple contractors. We have essentially 4 contractors instead of 1, which was the county. But we can, I think, have a little bit more control over the flood zones, and ultimately OneShoreline is responsible for the property taxpayers. And so it's a good thing for us to have that kind of hands-on a bit, and then obviously some savings. We anticipate financial savings. And so this contract is for environmental services, as I mentioned, and we put out an RFP, and we had 4 proposals, and the highest scoring firm based on the proposals and interviews is a firm called H.T. Harvey. H.T. Harvey is well known to us. They are working with us on the Bayfront Canal project, the monitoring and reporting for our permits on that project, which are still ongoing. And so H.T. Harvey responded to this. The work that they would do is biological and cultural monitoring, pre-construction training of firms that will actually be on site to implement the work, and supporting us on permitting and compliance and environmental mitigation strategy and need. And it's both for the flood zones and for emergency work that we might need over the next 3 years. This has a smaller amount, not to exceed amount, and that's $200,000 over a 3-year period. And again, work related to the flood zones will be funded by that, by those property tax zones, and work outside the flood zones we'd include in our operating budget. So requesting board approval to sign an agreement that was included in the packet with H.T. Harvey and Associates.
And this includes tribal consultations?
Yes, if needed.
Okay. Any questions?
A lot of times it is needed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Yeah.
Can we check online for potential speakers?
Or participants online, if you have any questions about this item, contract with H.T. Harvey, please raise your hand on Zoom. And I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, thank you, Steph. All right, any further discussion or a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Gaucher,
Yes.
Director Colson.
Yes.
Director Trong.
Yes.
And Chair Reddick.
Yes.
And carries.
Moving along. Item C is discuss the status of the fiscal year 2025-26 budgets for operations, flood zones, and capital projects, and the fiscal year 25-26 Measure K grant work plan.
Yes. So what I'd like to do today is take kind of a deep dive into our current year budget, and both in terms of what we approved, what we're estimating for year end, and then also our work plan, and give board members and the public a good understanding of where we're at, both for 25-26, our current year, and then the next agenda item to take a look at next year's budget that's emerging, and we'll bring back to the board in June. The reason that we're doing maybe a deeper dive now is to flush out issues ahead of time, of course, as we develop the budget for the next month. And also, we anticipate the June meeting will be pretty substantive, and we want to kind of go through this in more detail today, as opposed to in June, when we have a pretty big agenda planned. Okay. So this is taking a look at our approved budget in the middle column for 25-26, and included in the board packet was the actual approved budgets, both our operating and our flood zones budget and our capital projects budget. So the middle column includes what was approved, and the right-hand column is the estimated year end. I guess what I would highlight is expenses you'll see are substantially down from what was approved. Approved was about almost 2.6 million, and expenses were a little over 1.6. I would say there are a few things to highlight in terms of why that is. One is we spent less money on than expected on a project to reduce flooding in mobile home parks. And that's something that we're having conversations with Redwood City, and Supervisor Cochet has been involved in those conversations. and keenly interested as we are in moving that forward. Redwood City had a change of leadership at the public works director level, and just recently, the new interim person and I were in touch and to follow up on that. But we're hoping to start spending money on that. That's a state grant that we received a few years back. It's also eligible to be used on other mobile home parks, and we're targeting a mobile home park in the Harbor Industrial area all along Belmont Creek for that work as well. Also, our public infrastructure guidance spent less money this year than anticipated. We'll talk about in the work plan piece what our anticipated schedule for that is, and we're going to bring that to the board in September. That's the plan, right? And then finally, we have a project in Brisbane that we'll talk about also today. And that project is going to have most of its expenses in the next 2 fiscal years rather than having this one. So that's talking about expenses. We also were able to allocate more of the staff time to the flood zones, which is a good thing because it takes money out of our operating funds, which are the most limited amount of pot of money, and it extends the life of the agency in terms of operations, which is also a good thing, and we'll talk more about that. So our end of year reserves, we anticipate are slightly up from what was approved in the budget. And maybe board members, if you have a question, just interrupt me, and because there will be a lot that I'll go through. Okay, on the flood zones budget, looking at approved budget in the left column for each creek, and then the estimated year-end numbers for each column. I guess what I'll highlight in the conversation are the 3 numbers that are in boxes, 2 green boxes and 1 red box. And I have red boxes in this presentation to indicate like
Overage.
alarm bell. No, not overage. It's just something potentially to be on the lookout for the issue down the road. So the green box for Colma Creek means, in this case, our year-end reserves are up, which is generally a good thing. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is we don't actually know what the reserves number looks like until the audit is completed, and that happens after the end of the fiscal year. So what we present to you now is our best guess of what the reserve will be, and that number is kind of verified by the auditing process that concludes really in November when we present the numbers to the finance committee and then to the board. So anyway, that number is higher. I think it's a good thing to have a robust reserves from Colma Creek. What we've been doing with Colma Creek over the last step back for 6 years period is we inherited this infrastructure, Director Rack. We inherited this infrastructure that was built in the late 1960s and 1970s. That infrastructure is ailing, to say the least, in some cases, and it needs to be replaced both because it's ailing, and I won't say failing, but I'll say ailing. But also because it was built in a time and with assumptions that are different than our kind of current environment with the winter storms and the higher tides. And certainly looking forward, that's going to be the case. So it takes a while to right that ship, meaning it takes a while to change our design criteria and what our objectives are for these projects. We also waited a couple of years because we wanted, most of these projects are in the city of South San Francisco, and we wanted this work to be in complementary to their general plan, which they embarked on starting in 2020, and they completed basically 2 years later. And we didn't want to propose a bunch of creek projects that were in some way end up being in conflict with the general plan ideas that the city council was moving on. And so we waited on that and worked with city staff, and we have project ideas that are moving forward through a couple planning processes in Colma Creek right now. And at the end of the presentation today, Summer and Jonathan will talk a little bit about that. So that's why we want to have kind of a robust end of reserves for Colma Creek. The other things I'll highlight are in San Bruno Creek. We didn't spend as much money this year, but we will make up for it next year. That's the plan. And we have a project that Summer is leading to develop a series of projects, both easy and difficult, to move forward with both our funds that are in the zone, but also funds that are provided by others. And so I'll talk a little bit later about who are the others, in case the federal and state government are putting some money into our planning and design projects right now. And then on San Francisco Creek, I highlighted this $967,000 number to say that this is the least well-funded of the zones, and the JPA's request, the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority's request for annual contributions for their staff and their projects. Last year was about $900,000. This year it's the same. And just to say that we don't have an unlimited amount of money, and at some point in the not too distant future, probably in the 28 fiscal year, we just won't have money in that zone. And so that's why there's red boxes to kind of flag that as an issue. And last year we gave the full amount requested of not just us, but also Santa Clara Valley Water District, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, the 3 cities. But it's important that, full disclosure, everybody at the table, including all those other agencies, understand that we have a finite resource of property tax money coming from the watershed of San Francisco Creek. And it totals, this year it totals, about 500, you see there, $555,000. And so we'll have money for next year. We may have money for the year after that, but then after that it's done, basically. So
And they have
something.
big projects coming up too.
What happens?
Oh, yeah,
then?
yeah, projects, absolutely.
What happens?
Sorry.
What happens then when it runs out of money? Do they have to go back to the voters?
Well, I mean, every year we collect property taxes, so it won't go down to zero, but our ability to pay the requested contribution will be insufficient. And so then the board of OneShoreline makes a decision. Does it zero out the balance? Does it give a portion of that? But every year it'll still bring in property taxes. It just won't bring in property taxes to the level that is in the last few years. And especially it's gone up in 24, 25, 25, 26 and projected for next year. That's gone up a lot because of the projects that were just mentioned. And so our contribution goes towards staff time, but it also goes towards consultants to complete environmental documents on those projects and evaluate hydrology and things like that. And certainly we brought this up with on the staff level with the leadership of the other agencies, including the JPA, just so there are no surprises coming up in a couple of years. Yeah. I mean, the projects that are envisioned are extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not like whether we have $1 million in the
Yeah,
bank.
is it gonna make a difference?
This is a project that hopefully will have federal participation, state grant participation, but also will take several millions of dollars by the cities and the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Okay, so that's the flood zones budget. Now on to our capital projects budget. And again, this is comparing the approved budget with where we intend to end up at the end of this fiscal year. Bayfront Canal Atherton Channel Project, that's the BCACP. And that's the project that we constructed in 2021 and 2022, where Menlo Park, basically by Marsh Road, underneath Marsh Road, sending water from the flood prone Bayfront Canal under the road into the Fish and Wildlife Service ponds. So that project has an agreement that was signed in 2021 by OneShoreline, Menlo Park, Redwood City, San Mateo County, and Atherton. They all put money in so we could construct the project. It was about a $10 million project in total. And we constructed that project, and the remaining money by design was intended to fund our ability to comply with our permits, which is many years of permit monitoring and reporting and activity to actually make sure that habitat is sustained in the areas that we made commitments to support. So that, Kaya Eakin is calling. So that agreement is running its course. And here we are 5 years later, and by design, it was never intended to be in perpetuity. It was a certain amount for a certain period of time, in part because this town of Atherton, which is not where the project was done, but contributed water to the project, i.e. the problem. Atherton said that they would contribute toward construction, but they were not interested in perpetually funding the maintenance of a facility outside of their jurisdiction. So it was always designed that we would have a new agreement, which we intend to do this fiscal year and negotiate it with Redwood City, Menlo Park, and the county. And not surprisingly, we're kind of running out of money, and you'll see the end of your balance in the next agenda item at the end of the next fiscal year. Basically brings it down to less than $1,000, and we'll spend out that money, and over the course of the next 12 months, develop an agreement that to keep it going. Now, we don't need the permit activities to be going forever. Those actually have a 5-year time scale, and so I think those will expire in 2028. The permit requirements for Bayfront Canal, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
2028. Okay, so we still have to maintain the infrastructure, but we don't have to do the more expensive work of actually planting and grading and monitoring and reporting to the permitting agencies. Okay. Director Aiken will not be here. I just saw a text pop up. Okay, multitask on this one. And then I'll also say on FEWS, well, actually, Millbrae Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Project is MBSRP. And that project, we basically spend what we take in from our state grant from the Coastal Conservancy and a small federal grant from FEMA. And the FEMA grant is really for the planning and design aspect of this, really the planning aspect of this, right, and outreach. And that was $300,000 as opposed to the almost $4 million that we put into this project with the state grant. So that money, there will be about almost a little less than $900,000 left in that external funding at the end of this fiscal year. And we intend to use that to complete the draft DIR, which is our commitment to the Coastal Conservancy. And we plan to put out that EIR right around Labor Day. That's the plan. And hopefully complete a final EIR before the end of this calendar year. FEWS is our flood early warning system. That money has been funded by a state grant and by OneShoreline contributions from our operating fund. And that money to our operating fund actually comes from a Measure K grant from San Mateo County. That Measure K grant has 2 more years to it. And that funds our flood early warning system. And we are looking at what other state grants we might be able to get for that out in the future. We've also talked about federal grants, but for this, it's not very, there's not a good fit. We haven't found one at least, but we're looking at this because essentially the money for this project of flood early warning will run out at the end of the 27-28 fiscal year. Okay, so that concludes the discussion of the budget. Now I'll talk to the work plan. I'm not going to go through all the words on this slide, but I do want to touch on the last column, which is the status and accomplishments in regards to our tasks in the work plan. So we had essentially 4 tasks in the work plan. The first one is incorporating climate resilience and future conditions thinking into land use plans and approval of projects. And so this slide shows just for task 1. And this is a work plan based on the funding that comes in from San Mateo County for Measure K grants, 3-year grant, $2.25 million. So this is an annual work plan. So the first 2 items on this in regards to aligning, or in regards to land use, is helping the county with county planning activities, one of which was discussed in a previous meeting where we talked about the Princeton shoreline and the county's work to develop a transfer development rights program in Princeton. And then the other ones, the 3rd and 4th rows relate to our public infrastructure guidance, which I mentioned we're working on right now, and we plan to put out a public draft in September. And then the last row is related to the local hazard mitigation plan, which we'll talk about later in this board meeting, and which involves all of our jurisdictions participating in that countywide plan. So the second task, advance the slide. Okay, second task is in regard to aligned planning, funding, design, permitting of projects for developed natural and recreational areas across jurisdiction. So this one had activities related to the regional shoreline adaptation plans that we've talked about and we'll talk about in June because we'll be awarding some contracts in regard to that. And also looking at, and this is both a project in Brisbane, on the shoreline of Brisbane, but also on the 5 southern cities. There's a separate project involving San Carlos, Belmont, Redwood City, Menlo Park, and West Palo Alto. And then this also involves the Millbrae and Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Plan and our activities with Redwood City and with the city of San Mateo on their shoreline resilience programs. And then our work on the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side to get the federal government involved. So all of these are about multi-jurisdictional efforts. In terms of the status, a lot of it relates to funding and our funding agreements with the Ocean Protection Council this past year for the 2 regional shoreline adaptation plans, and a funding agreement that we anticipate signing with the Bay Restoration Authority. At its first meeting, or at its meeting in June, the Restoration Authority Board is going to consider our grant regarding the Brisbane Living Shoreline Project, which we're very excited about. And it will be done in kind of concert with our work funded by the Ocean Protection Council on that. And then in terms of Millbrae and Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Project, we plan on putting the EIR out, as I said, around Labor Day. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. The administrative draft has been out for a few months now with the local jurisdictions. We're supporting Redwood Shores and the city of San Mateo on their work, their projects. And then in terms of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, we secured a $50,000 earmark, and we actually have our kickoff meeting this Thursday with the Corps of Engineers and the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side. And we just have really good news that came up as a result of the House Energy and Water Committee markup for the appropriations bill for next year. That was completed on Friday and voted on Friday, and then released. And that included a substantial boost in funding for our work with the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side. So we're really excited about that. Okay, so that is task 2. Task 3 relates to dealing with the impacts of extreme storms. And I guess for this one, I talked about the flood early warning system already, and it's about expanding the system. We installed a new gauge on Alameda de los Pulgos in the Atherton Channel this year. We're working, hopefully this year we'll do one in Porcitos Creek in the next few months. I know Chair Reddick is working on that. So this would support Half Bay's flood early warning. So we'll keep on working on that as we're funded to for the next 2 years. And then we'll see what happens after that. And then routine maintenance on Bayside creeks. This is the project to get 5-year permits to remove debris from multiple creeks, including Atherton Channel, Cordilleras Creek, Belmont Creek, and then San Bruno Creek. So it involves 6 cities and county areas as well. And then the Bayfront Canal Atherton Channel project that we talked about. And it says at the bottom there that maintenance beyond June of 27 requires a new funding agreement. That's what I was talking about earlier. Okay, and the last task is actually a combination of 4 and 5, according to our agreement, and that's supporting the county on grants and policies and technical information. And so the status of that is just multiple activities with Pacifica and with San Mateo County and with Brisbane, and looking for grants related to various jurisdictions around the county. Sometimes we're the applicant for that money, and sometimes we support their development of a grant application or put in a letter of support, what have you. Supporting their drought task force work at the county level, and then also identifying priority projects for the next work plan. So we have this discussion today, and then next week, Wednesday, our team will be meeting with county department heads from, I think, 6 departments. It's a pretty big group of county department heads, including planning and building, parks, public works, sustainability, and I think there is at least one other. The Department of Emergency Management. And anyway, that might be it. That's enough. And so we're talking about next year's work plan and getting their input into the work plan process, which at the end of the day is Measure K funded. So then we'll bring back the work plan for approval by the board, OneShoreline board, in June as part of the budget discussion. Okay, so that's it for 4C. Open up for questions. So everything here is about this fiscal year, and then 4D is about what our plans are for next fiscal year.
Any comments or questions?
Very thorough. Yeah, that's good. Appreciate it.
Let's check online to see if there's any raised hands.
Yes, I do see a raised hand on Sue, and Ann Schneider, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself, so you can go ahead and speak for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation on the budget. I'm going to be really honest, and I'm speaking only for myself. OneShoreline is doing great work for many other areas. For Millbrae, you are looking at raising the height of a park that we can't even go into the water with. And you don't include the flooding, although yes, you put some meters at the Green Hills Golf Club to see about forewarning for flooding. But along with this, along with SD 63 and funding for transit, when Millbrae has been made to pay the price for these regional agencies, I'm not sure it's in Millbrae's best interest, or frankly, me as a leader of Millbrae, to encourage paying for things that we don't see a value for. I'm saying this now so that you give you time to think about doing a little bit more work with Millbrae, look at how we are flooded, help us with SFO, and help make SFO take responsibility for the fact that we flood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anybody else?
And I don't see any other.
Any further discussion? No action required today. So we'll move on to item 4D, which is to discuss the fiscal year 26-27 budgets.
Okay, so now we're turning to next year's budgets. And I'd like to start this with a snapshot of kind of where our long-term projections with our operating funds. And so the slide that's up on the screen now is our estimated operating funds through 2930. And you see above the 7/1/26, it says we are here, which just means this point in time at the end of the 25-26 fiscal year. Okay, so I guess what I'll highlight here on the revenue side is the Measure K grant is $750,000. The current one, we've had more than one. The current one is $750,000 a year, and that expires at the end of the 27-28 fiscal year. The reason you see in this fiscal year a higher number under San Mateo County is that we were closing out a previous Measure K grant at the same time we were starting up a new one, and so the number is higher. It's almost 1.2 million for this current fiscal year, which is super helpful. In terms of city contributions are lower than what we anticipated. And so we're anticipating 285,000 this year, and hopefully a little more than that in the next 2 years. But this is again our second round of requests to the cities that was made about a year ago by initially through a letter that involved Chair Ruddock and Vice Chair Gaucher and myself. And I met with city managers a couple times to talk about it. And I know there were other conversations that were had. And so about half the cities are contributing and about half aren't. We were anticipating a few more than that would contribute. And that's kind of where the numbers are shaking out in terms of city contributions.
Do we have a list of who's contributing and who's not?
We do.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we need help. Like,
I think it would be great to see that list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send that around.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. And then other revenue, it refers to grants and investment income. And we're pretty good on the state grant side. We've had multiple state grants in the last 12 months, and that's going to sustain us for a while. So you see, that's the revenue side. In terms of expenses, the expenses for next year are up really for two reasons. One is we hired 2 new staff to work on those grants, those projects, and that those projects are through the operating budget. And so those projects, the money comes in, is on the state grant side, and then the expenses go out on the operating side. And so and then, yeah, that's pretty much all I'll highlight. In addition to the end game is that at the end of the 29-30 fiscal year, we have a little over $1 million anticipated. So reserves would be expected to run out about end of calendar year 2030, December 31, 2030. That's about 10 months longer than what we estimated a year ago at this moment, when we presented the same graph to the board, and we said when we thought operating revenue would run out. So we've never been assuming that we're in perpetuity until we are. And so there have been a lot of conversations that have involved our subcommittee, strategic planning committee of the board, and other entities to think about long-term funding streams, and that might include a parcel tax. And so we're still exploring that. But we have a bit of an on-ramp here in terms of funding. And but if you think about it, between now and 2030, there's essentially 3 elections. And so we don't have, if we're going to go to the ballot, then we don't have an endless number of opportunities.
Do we have to, may I?
Please.
Do we have to go to the ballot on, can we go on a primary? Do we have to go on a general?
Can be on a primary.
We can go on a primary.
Absolutely. And one of the things we're looking at is a primary.
Okay.
2028.
2028 primary.
Okay, so that is kind of the long-term picture for funding. So we'll take a look at the operating budget. We already went through the approved and the estimated year end in the last board item. I won't go through that. In terms of what is emerging in our draft budget, we have, as we saw in the last slide, we have revenues anticipated about $2.7 million. And part of that is just relative to last year, this whole thing with the Measure K grants, not having 2 grants coming in, but 1. So that's what that number is mostly about. In terms of expenses, again, we have more staff, which is great. And we have more projects to both fund that staff, but also expenses related to that activity. And that's what we're looking at, with total expenses of about 2.9. The end of year balance, so about the same, about $250,000, $250,000 less at the end of year balance. But this relates to the previous graph in terms of how that balance would play out for the next fiscal year. In terms of the flood zones, we looking at Colma Creek. You see that the expenses number, the revenue number is climbing slightly. It's probably mostly related to property tax and investment revenue. The expenses number is substantially down, and that's because $12.5 million we've used this year at the beginning of this fiscal year to pay off the long-term bond that we inherited from San Mateo County as it built the projects over the last few decades. And so we paid off that bond. And so now our expenses kind of go back to a quote unquote normal level for the last few years, which is about $3 million. Our end of year balance is growing, which for the reasons I talked about earlier, I think is really good. We are developing project ideas and project concepts and project designs. So we will start spending that money, but we wanted to do it at the right time when we had all the information at hand, including information from the city. In San Bruno, our balance is going to be a little over, well, between $3 and $3.5 million at the end of next fiscal year. It in no way is enough to cover the needs. San Bruno has 2 pump stations from the 1960s and a tide gate from the 1940s. And those are all expensive pieces of equipment. And so City of San Bruno approved a ballot measure called Measure Q for its stormwater needs. And it's really going to take a combination of our money, Measure Q money, but also federal money. And so we have a FEMA grant, about $1 million right now to do planning and design. And part of the FEMA grant, to their credit, is to develop a benefit cost ratio and materials for a next application for FEMA funding. That's how they roll, and that's a good thing. And so we intend to, it's going to take the village on this one to address these San Bruno Creek problems. And in San Francisco Creek, already talked about that issue, highlight the end of year balance of between 900,000 and $1 million. Okay, on capital projects, we already saw the end of year they approved and the estimated end of year on capital projects, and here's the numbers for next year. I guess I'll highlight just what's in the red dash box at the bottom, which I already touched on, and that is Bayfront Canal. At the end of next year, we'll run out of money. We'll need a new agreement. That's not unexpected. Millbrae Burlingame is going to run out of money at the end of next year. That's not unexpected. And that goes with the completion of the draft EIR. And then we'll be talking with the cities about what that looks like going forward in terms of the project. And then flood early warning system essentially runs out of money, but we'll be backstopping that with the Measure K grant as talked about before, which is going towards our operating funds. And then the new project, this is in pink, the BLSP, Brisbane Living Shoreline Project. That's the one that is funded by the Restoration Authority. And that one will be part now of our capital budget. And the reason to distinguish that in our capital budget from the Brisbane Resilience Plan, which is not in our capital budget, is the resilience plan. We don't anticipate actually constructing things out of that and taking, holding assets. The Brisbane Living Shoreline Project, Restoration Authority, the end result of that is actually building oyster beds and actual physical assets that somebody owns in the bay. And so that's now going to be capitalized. And that's why it shows up here as opposed to our other project, which is really a planning project as part of BCDC's regional shoreline connotation plan. So that's that planning project is not in the capital. And so just highlighting a lot of these things are going to be, we could raise new monies for Millbrae Burlingame or for, Bayfront Canal, we will, through a new agreement, flood early warning, we will. So those won't go off the chart, but I just want to highlight that this is what the numbers look like at the end of the fiscal year, because they're at least financially winding down with current funding available. And that concludes the discussion of next year's budget, which you'll see in June.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions from Director?
I have a question. Thanks for the presentation and the info. So I guess could we go? I guess the slide that shows sort of the first budget slide, I guess, would be the one.
Is it this one?
Yes, thank you. So a couple of questions, but so on this one, I mean, I know you're anticipating, you're zeroed out sort of county and city and sort of lower grant levels. So, but I'm assuming you've got people, you're still applying for grants. So yes. This number is sort of projected as it is today, but we could go back for more to the county and others as well. So that's might give you more flexibility pushing out. Have you also, with some of these projects, I mean, how much are we asking for a match from the local jurisdictions, or are we doing anything to kind of recover some of your costs, staff costs for doing certain things? I mean, I think that may be, we heard some public comment about they're not doing more over here in Millbrae, like, sure, maybe we can do more, but we need, or any city, right, where we're doing it. If you're working on a project with us, maybe we start looking at getting some matches in to do that, to kind of recoup some of the revenue and some of the costs that you're having.
Yeah. So would you mind? Yes, please. We are moving in that direction really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think you should.
Yeah.
At this point,
And so, and when I said, when I was talking about here, and I said the staff costs are going up and they're funded by state projects, we're between the flood zones and the projects, our staff costs, we don't have the luxury anymore of just diving into initiatives that are cost intensive. And where I think we did take that approach in the first few years, in part because we were just growing and getting to know people and all that, it made more sense to kind of be, let's say, less rigid in a cost recovery mode for staff time. And so we are very much going in that direction. it kind of pains me to do that in a way, but you know, that's where we're at this coming fiscal year. And so you'll see in the budget that we propose what percentage of staff costs are being reimbursed by flood zones and projects. And it's, what do you think? What, give me a ballpark, Lucy, of what that will be.
Last year, I mean, this fiscal year average, our staff spent about 28% of the time on flood zone.
But if we took the total staff expenses and we minused out what was being reallocated to other projects, flood zones and other projects, do we?
We allocate out of our general funds 40% of our personnel cost to flood zone and
This year, 40%.
yeah, 40%.
And I bet you it's gonna be over 50% in the next fiscal.
But some of that is where you've already got the San Francisco, like Coma Creek and those we've already got sort of this established time. I think more sort of new projects or other projects coming in. I mean, I know from the city standpoint, I mean, we try to recover all our fees
Absolutely.
basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that we're covering our staff costs.
Right.
I don't think you should feel, first, I don't think you should feel bad about it. To do it. And then I also think like there's things, if we're looking at things like flood gauges that are benefiting that community, who's paying for the cost of the gauge? I mean, some of those costs are not large, but I think we just, I think you should do a full up and down kind of assessment of where there could be some cost recovery.
And we
For
did
the-
that
for the organization.
Yeah, thank you for that. For the flood gauges, we just started doing that. For example, Atherton paid for the installation of its gauge. That was the first time we'd ever charged anybody for that. And that was this calendar year. So yeah, we're heading in that direction and appreciate that. And I'll try to, Lucy and I will work on how to talk about that at the June board meeting in a way that, you know, we can have a good conversation about what that looks like and whether we should be doing more or yeah.
And have the data
Yeah.
of what's been spent already for who.
100%.
Yeah.
So for example, tomorrow night's our budget meeting, so we're proposing, I think we have 175,000 left on our environmental impact report, is that?
To take it from draft to final.
To take it from draft to final, so 85% of that works in Burlingame, so I'm looking to try to fund that. 25% or, excuse me, 15% is Millbrae. And they've been a no, they're not gonna pay for it, so I'm gonna have to make some phone calls over there and talk to them and say, hey. You know, even though you only have a small piece of shoreline touching there, this is it, but you know. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it should be some proportional
Yeah, you gotta
and
contribute.
get some cost recovery.
Yeah. You have to contribute. So yeah, we're taking it, Michael and I are taking it to our board tomorrow. And I'm hoping we'll be able to figure out a way to fund it. And I think that's fair.
We'll talk about it next month. Good.
Any other comments or questions? Can we go to online participation?
Yes, I do see a raised hand on Sue and Ann Schneider, and I will allow you to mute yourself and you have 2 minutes.
My apologies, I didn't take my hand down. No comment.
Okay.
We'll bring it back. Any further discussion? Seeing
Really
none,
appreciate it. Appreciate the transparency around the
Yeah.
budget. It's very helpful.
both items.
Yeah. Thanks. Capital land.
I'd like to recommend that we go back to item 3A, which was approve the minutes. We didn't have, since I had to abstain, we didn't have enough to actually act on this.
votes.
Uh-oh.
So
All right.
moved to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, Chair's report. I don't have anything today. Item 6, CEO's report.
Yes, so there are 2 items to touch on. One is the local hazard mitigation plan, which is out now for public comment. And we are a part of that plan, both in terms of working with the county and the other jurisdictions to develop the document. And then also we have our own annex, which is essentially an attachment to the plan, like all the jurisdictions do. OneShoreline has an attachment related to our specific activities in the plan. The importance of being part of a local hazard mitigation plan, LHMP, is that It's really twofold. One is so that we all, cities, county, OneShoreline, Harbor District, other entities, can work together on planning to reduce, how to reduce local hazards. That's number one. The second one is if you're part of an approved plan by FEMA, then you're eligible for FEMA funding directly. And so, for example, OneShoreline wrote an application for FEMA money to go to the city of Redwood City to do work on the Redwood Shores levee project that they're undertaking right now. And we wrote an application for Burlingame to apply to FEMA for $300,000 to our Millbrae and Burlingame Shoreline Resilience Plan. Both of those things were done by others, the city of Burlingame or the city of Redwood City, even though we wrote the applications, but we couldn't apply because at that point we weren't yet part of a multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. We became part of one, and then we applied for FEMA money for San Bruno, and we got 900 something thousand for that. And so that money then goes to us, which is a lot easier to deal with than running it through another jurisdiction. So being part of this plan is good, and we are part of the kind of development of the big plan, and then also we have our own annex. The public comment period started on Friday, and it goes for 1 month. And as part of being part of the plan, we OneShoreline and all of the other agencies need to promote public engagement in it. And so that's what we're doing today. We've done it in other venues as well. On the screen is the website for where to receive it, and also an email address. It's being managed by the County Department of Emergency Management. And so that is that.
The old fashioned.
Yeah.
Proof, thanks.
No, that's the first time we actually did it. Okay, good.
Good idea.
Yeah, it's a requirement. Okay, any questions or comments about Village MP?
That's great.
And then I'm gonna actually turn it over to Summer and Jonathan to talk a little bit. My voice is going. Talk a little bit about Homa Creek and where we're at. We have a few slides on it.
Yeah, we've been covering a lot of ground on Home Creek, in the flood zone more widely, this last year. Through regularly quarterly inspections, we have been updating the scope of work for the upcoming routine maintenance. That includes another 400 cubic yards of sediment removing out of Home Creek Channel later this year, as well as vegetation management and servicing of the infrastructure. And substantial work on our next round of regulatory permits for routine maintenance. With our water board and also Army Corps permits already accepted.
Great.
On stewardship, we had cleanup events in March, picketed on previously, and also just this last weekend, the 16th, for National River Cleanup Day. We've had great participation, a lot of good conversations on our project work and also the creek more widely. A lot of excited plans on vegetation and wildlife in the creek, and also on the trash removal, approximately over 200 gallons of trash removed just in those last two events. On the repair and replacement work, we noted there was a replacement of 12 outfalls on the lower reach of the creek, which was finally completed this year with the punch list and a notice of completion filed earlier this year. And on conditions assessment nearing completion on a reach of the creek, there have been a few assessments done with engineering consultation for some irregularities that we've observed in the channel conditions. There's been some surface work completed to identify where there's some of those concerns and targeting particular areas that has informed our current project work that's ongoing right now. And the report is pending this month. And also work is well underway on two major design and planning projects, the watershed plan and also the Lower Homa Creek Resilience projects. You can see there in the map graphic in the bottom right, the watershed plan being over the entire flood zone area, and the Lower Homa Creek projects specific to a smaller reach near the bay. On both efforts, we've already had 5 working group meetings. with project partners, great participation, including local jurisdictions, agencies, and community groups, informing our efforts. And we've also been working on identifying and assessing feasibility on a range of alternatives for the channel proper, but also the surrounding infrastructure. And you can move to the next slide. On the watershed plan specifically, we're currently updating a list of project policy and program concepts for further analysis of impacts this spring and later in the summer. Currently organized into 3 main categories. For the creek adjacent work, including concepts for channel widening, green belts, and parks designed to flood safely, as well as new berms and flood walls and other related concepts. On the watershed concepts across the wider watershed for surface flow and peak flow attenuation, looking at green schoolyards, streets designed to flood safely, as well as grant programs and grant programs for water capture, conservation, and reuse on private properties, among other concept considerations. And also on floodproofing and hardening for building code requirements, grant programs for retrofits, and also voluntary acquisition concepts.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
Through the chair, I have just one question on the sediment. As we're removing sediment, are we relocating it to other projects, or what happens to the sediment as we're moving it out of the creek location?
Good question.
It depends on the soil testing.
Okay.
In this area, we've had some contamination, in which case it does get taken to a landfill, but when it's clean enough, we do look for opportunities to adaptively reuse that nearby.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have any comments online about the CEO's report?
I do see a raised hand and Ann Schneider, I think this is a new raised hand. Now you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Looking at what you all have done for Colma Creek, and I understand that this has been a flood zone well before OneShoreline was created. That's a great plan, but you can see how that is absent from the city of Millbrae. And in fact, years ago, when some of us, Marie, we were on the Vulnerability Assessment Task Force, some of San Bruno's water is going to end up in the wetlands that end up in Millbrae. So while this is really great, it's a perfect example of how my community has been ignored on this. Even when we flooded in 2021 in 2 atmospheric rivers and I was mayor, that didn't get the attention of the Board of Supervisors last week on their charter, whereas the flooding farther south of us did. There is this blind spot in this county that because SFO is there, we don't have to worry about anything. SFO is on county unincorporated land. To me, putting responsibility on managing it on the regional agencies and the county. But so I'm happy for this, yay, but it's also very sad that the best we can get out of the Millbrae Burlingame plan is to raise the park up 7 feet. Can you understand my frustration and my disappointment? Thank you. And the other one, I can't remember what the director said earlier. There was something on that plan. Colma Creek just took it out of my mind. But you have to see how, in my case, I feel like we're the forgotten person. And then we've got SFPUC on the other side making us high fire risk. So we need help.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else?
And I don't see any other raised hands on Zoom, Chair.
Okay. Item 7, board member reports and items for future agenda. Anybody? Seeing nothing, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
See you.